afternoon, everyone. I hope you can hear me loud and clear. Good afternoon, magandang hapon po. And to our participants from South Africa, good morning. I'm Rafael Montes Jr., and this is Counting the Costs, CLRG's webinar talk show series on the Bandanas ruling. Coming up in the next hour and a half, we will be talking to Environment Undersecretary Annalisa Te and DILG Director Annalisa Bonagua as we try to digest the implications of Executive Order 138, which was recently released to implement the Supreme Court's ruling on the Bandanas Garcia petition, granting our local governments a larger share in all national taxes beginning in 2022. But before that, our Dean at the UP National College of Public Administration and Governance would like to welcome you all to today's learning event. Friends, our Dean, Professor Dan Sagi.
Thank you very much, Ralph. Magandang hapon po sa ating lahat. Welcome to this third leg of the webinar series on the Bandanas ruling. The focus of our webinar today is defining the administrative and fiscal boundaries for environmental and disaster management after full devolution takes place. I would like to start by wishing you and your families my best for your health and safety, especially in this time of COVID-19. I would like also to express my gratitude to Undersecretary of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources, Attorney Annalisa Te, and Director Annalisa Bonagua of the Bureau of Local Government Development of the Department of Interior and Local Government for accepting our invitation as speakers in this webinar. Likewise, my gratitude also to Director Ari Celestino and the staff of the Center for Local and Regional Governance for hosting this event. I am very happy for your continuous hosting of this kind of exercise to share knowledge and experiences in managing public affairs and keeping the college in the public affairs concerns conversation. Webinars such as this provide us an opportunity to learn, to network, share, and create ideas and ignite motivation. The benefits in joining this webinar may differ for each of us, but through this exercise, we continue to expand our professional and personal development and are provided with information that we may not be able to generate internally from within our organization. The knowledge and experiences we learn from others help us make well-informed decisions about policies, programs, and projects by putting the best available evidence. LGUs are very important for every heterogeneous society. They are well situated to respond to challenges at the community level. With the Bandanas ruling, local governments will have more resources to efficiently and expediently serve their constituents and improve and hasten delivery of much needed basic services. The ruling, I believe, will contribute to the maturation of the promised autonomy to local governments. There are so many questions as to the potential effects and impacts of the Bandanas ruling. For today, we focus on the environment. We are aware of the increasing incidence and severity of disasters like typhoons, floods, and drought, and are leaving more people vulnerable each year, particularly the poor and the marginalized. Climate change is increasing the frequency and intensity of these climate-related hazards, leading to a higher number of deaths and injuries, as well as increased property and economic losses. Human vulnerability to natural hazards is further exacerbated by ongoing environmental degradation and high population density in those areas. Environmental degradation reduces the capacity of the ecosystem to provide important support to communities. We must maintain a healthy ecosystem to reduce the risks of disasters. But then it will cost us. Fortunately for us today, we have resource speakers who have expertise in managing our environment and our finances. Using what they have already learned and created can save a lot of time and resources in dealing with the changes and the challenges that we face. We hope that this webinar will be an effective exercise for sharing information to understand, support, and promote local government administration by generating relevant and up-to-date information and sharing of experiences. I sincerely hope that the lessons learned in this webinar will assist all of us as we pursue local government development. Before concluding, allow me to thank all of you for your interest in this webinar. I trust that you would find this exercise to be a rewarding experience. Marami pong salamat at magandang hapon muli sa ating lahat.
Maraming salamat po kay Dean Sagil. In our last episode, we tried to take a peek at the provisions of the draft executive order, which was still waiting for the president's signature. And now that the EO is out, we can now officially examine and discuss the policy issues arising from its provisions. Last May, we found out that because of the reduced fiscal space of the national government agencies, we'll have to defund certain programs, projects, and activities, which will be fully devolved to the LGUs. As a guide, then guest Budget Assistant Secretary Rolando Toledo spoke about 3 parameters that will guide national agencies in choosing which PPAs to no longer include in the 2022 national budget. Take a listen.
The formulation of the development transition plan is guided by 3 factors, tatlo yan. Una, yung public services with little or no benefit spillover shall be administered by lower level governments, while public services with significant benefit spillover are best assigned to higher levels of government. Now, pangalawa, just to finish, tatlo po ito. Second, the provision of public goods and services that involve economies of scale is best assigned, of course, to higher levels of government. And lastly, functions that are related to the redistributive role of the government should be handled by the national government.
That was DBM Assistant Secretary Rolly Toledo. We initially conceptualized the series to tackle the issues surrounding the functions devolved through the local government code. But picking PPAs to defund may be more difficult if you are considering what ASEC Toledo there was saying in terms of spillover benefits and economies of scale. Environmental issues and disasters surely are local concerns, but more often affect not just one, but a group of LGUs. We know for a fact that disasters do not recognize political boundaries. Watershed areas, protected areas, or riverbeds are often not enclosed within just one jurisdiction. So how would national agencies and local governments navigate this conundrum? That's why we've invited today Undersecretary Annalisa Revuelta-Te, who is Undersecretary for Finance, Information System, and Climate Change at the Department of the Environment and Natural Resources. She has previously served the DANR in various capacities as Assistant Secretary for Legal Services and for Foreign Assisted Projects and Special Projects. She was Chief of Staff from 2011 to 2016 and Supervising Undersecretary for Mining and Environment. We also have with us today a returning panelist, Director Annalisa Bonagua, who heads the Bureau of Local Government Development, or BLGD. It is the Department of the Interior and Local Government's Policy Development Unit for capacity building for local governments. Director Bonagua supervises programs like the Ease of Doing Business, Improving Competitiveness for LGUs, the Performance Challenge Fund, Mainstreaming DRR and Climate Change in Local Development Planning, SDG Localization, and the promotion of the community-based monitoring system, among others. Thank you very much for setting aside some of your time for us, ma'ams. You probably noticed by now that our panelists are both named Annalisa. That was a surprise to us, but fortunately, USECTE prefers to be called Anna, and Director Bonagua prefers Lisa. So let me begin first with our returning panelist as a manner of updates na rin about the EO. Director Lisa Bonagua, so nice to have you back, ma'am.
Good afternoon, Ralph, and
Good afternoon,
to all
ma'am.
our audience.
Yes, ma'am. Speaking of the last time you were here, we're just going to play a video of what you said for us to review what we discussed back then.
I think that technically it cannot be called devolution of function. There is no devolution of new functions and services to local government units. What we are scaling down, and hopefully the local governments will scale up naman, are programs of national government in support of the devolved functions. Hindi siya functions, but these are programs in support of devolved functions, which national government will slowly scale down, phased out, because the money is now with local government units.
Okay, Ma'am Lisa, is it still the same game plan now that the budget season is upon us? Has the DILG and the Interagency Committee finished with the inventory of which PPAs will be downscaled at the national level?
Yes, Ralph. Actually, right now, a good number of national government agencies have already submitted their devolution transition plan to the DBM. To name a few, well, the DILG, DA, DNR, DOH, DOLE, DOT, DPWH, DSWD, and NIA. And the DTPs of these NGAs indicates the functions and the services and the programs that they will have to devolve to local government units, and to which level of local government units these programs and projects are to be devolved or to be downloaded. So the same thing, and right now the DILG is at the end of the race. We are now at the end phase of the preparation of the guidelines for the LGU DTPs naman, which will require local government units the same way prepare their devolution transition plan, coordinating with the devolution transition plan of national government agencies. So the devolution transition plans of LGUs will indicate the functions and services that they have to assume based on an inventory that they themselves have to do based on Section 17 of the Local Government Code and other laws passed after the Local Government Code. So kung may mga gaps doon, they will have to fully assume those. Plus, the programs and projects that national government agencies will be devolving to local government units. And they also have to indicate in the devolution transition plans of local governments the phasing and the timing of the assumption. They are given 3 years, no, from 2022 to 2024 to phase the full assumption. So kailangan talaga ng close coordination with national government agency as local government units assume, national government scale down. So kailangan may seamless transition ito. So this is what's happening right now. In fact, this very moment, the Committee on Devolution is meeting to finalize the IRR, the Implementing Rules and Regulation of the EO 138, as well as look into the guidelines for the devolution transition plans of local government units.
Yes, ma'am. Quick follow-up to that. How will LGUs know of this list that the national government is preparing? Is it being done centrally at the DILG?
Currently, right now, no, our DILG regional offices are doing are facilitating the dialogue between the national agency, regional offices, and the local government units. In fact, kanina umaga may mga other regions who are facilitating dialogue with the regional. Kasi doon nang gagaling kung ano yung specific projects that will be downloaded and to what specific local government units, whether provincial government or city or municipality.
Okay. Thank you for those updates, ma'am. I guess this question is for both of you, and maybe we should begin with you, Te, this time. Given that both environmental management and disaster risk reduction management often deal with issues and problems that transcend local boundaries, as I had explained a little earlier, what are the challenges of sorting through such intertwined functional assignments? So, Undersecretary Te?
Yeah, thank you. Before I answer that question, let me thank first Professor Dan Sakil, the NCPAG Dean, and Professor Alicia Celestino, the CLRG Director, for organizing this kind of forum, and of course for inviting DNR. Well, you're correct that in the environment and natural resource management, there is transboundary nature of how to perform the governance or management of the natural resources. So even with with or without devolution, we have been promoting an integrated approach, no, on resource management. For example, for watershed, we are promoting integrated water resource management or integrated river basin management, and with that we promote uh, collaboration through creation of interagency composed of the national government and the local government uh, institutional mechanism, because we know that number one, the constraints that we encounter there is the varying levels of resources which the LGUs provide, no, for their environment and natural resource activities or protection activities. Number two, the level of commitment of the different LGUs. And number three, we also know that, of course, we acknowledge the reality of the election season, which happens every 3 years. Now, that kind of instability also contributes
Mhm,
as
mhm.
constraints in managing the environment and natural resource management or environment and natural resources. So what we would like to do is to have an integrated approach, institutionalize this mechanism that we implement on the ground, so that we can ensure the collaboration, the partnership, not only of the national government and the local government units, but also of the other stakeholders. We think that this is the best way to really approach environment and natural resource management and disaster risk reduction and management at the ground level.
Okay, ma'am. Director Bonago, how do you do it with disaster management?
Well, the DILG with the oversight agencies, DBM, NEDA, and DOF have been advocating for the vertical and horizontal linkage for the longest time. No, we have the GMC 2016, which espouses just that. No, the vertical and horizontal linkages, the harmonization or the alignment of the local government's plan with national government, as well as the synchronization of the local PFM processes from local planning, investment programming, to budgeting, and even revenue generation, as well as the close coordination within the regional and provincial level, facilitated through the Regional Development Council. And with this devolution, we are particularly emphasizing the exercise of the oversight role of the provincial government, harmonizing and putting in place the convergence mechanism, at least within the province. The provincial government providing leadership and providing direction for the province, for the cities and municipalities and barangays within the province, and eliciting some accountability and commitment among the component LGUs in order for the provincial LGUs to be able to commit to the requirements and to align with the requirements of the Philippine Development Plan through the Regional Development Plan. So those are the things that we are currently, and that includes all sectors. No, while we are more focused on the PFM processes, the core and functional role of local governments, this will also impact into the sectoral requirements that should be implemented by local government units, including environment, health, etc.
Okay. the LGUs po are celebrating because by 2022 they're going to have additional funding. But national government is now constrained because of the much less fiscal space that it has. Yusek Te, have you estimated or projected the financial implications of the Mandana's ruling for environment and natural resources services? How much is this? How much is the ANR going to take a hit?
Well, actually, we have complied with the requirement of the DBM to come up with a devolution transition plan. No? And in that devolution transition plan, there is an estimation. I mean, you have to provide the data on how much of your 2021 budget was assigned for that specific project
Mm.
program activities or PPA.
Opo.
So I don't know whether you can consider that as a total
Mm.
the total to be devolved, because I don't think that is the idea. The idea is to determine which of these PPAs can actually be devolved to the LGUs and how much budget do you have for that, and therefore that is something that you can use to provide technical assistance to the local
Mm.
government units,
Mm.
or you can actually I don't know, maybe through a memorandum of agreement with the local government unit, transfer to them so that they can actually implement those activities. I'm not sure uh, of the total amount. I think it's more than almost a billion, the amount, if I have the correct list. And these are mostly on the implementation of the solid waste management.
Ah, I see. I see.
So yes,
Opo.
but because this requires, for example, the procurement of solid waste management machineries and equipment, which actually
Mm.
even before the EO
Mm.
138, we have actually been already providing funds to the local government units to come up with their materials recovery facilities, shredder or whatever
Mhm.
that, so that they
Mhm.
can minimize generation of waste in their localities.
So, managing expectations with the Mandanas ruling effects, posible, ma'am, that eventually by 2022 this will be completely transferred to local governments.
Well, actually, for 2022, we will be targeting the budget as a whole, and we will abide by the DBM policy that we should not provide funding for the LGUs that have already I mean that are already capacitated or have the
Mm. Mhm.
capacity to do the activities, no, but we will remain intact this budget for these activities to ensure that continuing assistance and support to the LGUs may
Mhm.
still be undertaken. But if I may lang, Rafi, no,
Yes, ma'am.
we one of the strategies that we're trying to do now, because if you approach it at the national government level,
Mhm.
it's not, I mean at the national scope, sometimes it's not too parang you cannot measure immediately the impact. So we have identified under our climate change adaptation mitigation and disaster risk reduction cluster roadmap 24 vulnerable provinces.
Mm. Mm.
So we would like to focus on capacitating the 24 vulnerable provinces in terms of assisting them in investing on integrated water resource management, coastal resilience, water security, and water resilience, no, so that we can really ensure the enabling them to become adaptive communities and develop their adaptive capacity. So with these 24 vulnerable provinces, we would like to do some kind of spatial mapping. I think I will be able to show that later, so that we can really identify where the resources should be put and how should we really assist the local government units. So the DBM has already provided us a list of the provinces, cities, and municipalities who need most help, and the DILG has come up with a paper which I think is a good guide for us, where they will assess the LGU performance versus the LGU capacity, and based on that guidance, if the, for example, the LGU has low capacity but high high performance, the role of the national government agencies as enabler, no. And if it's a high with high capacity, high performance, the role of the national government agency is to help that LGUs evolve from their respective role, and so on and so forth. So we would like to uh, ensure that the evolution in these 24 vulnerable provinces maximize this opportunity of having the Mandanas ruling, uh, and convince them to really invest on environment and natural resource management, particularly addressing the impacts of climate change. And in fact, we had already a meeting with the leagues of provinces, leagues of cities, and league of municipalities. We also have Director Liza there, no, because we want to lobby. It's now the other way around, eh? Unlike
Mhm,
before, where the LGUs
mhm.
will have to lobby before the
Yes, ma'am.
NGAs for us to provide funds. Now
Yes,
we are
ma'am.
lobbying before the local.
Opo.
Although even with the, as I said, even before the Mandanas ruling, we have been convincing, no, promoting to the local government units that, if you want to protect economic to promote economic development, social development in your locality, you have to invest in natural resource management and disaster risk reduction. And with the leagues there, we hope that we will be able to come up with a more responsive budget program. So we have this risk resiliency program where we hope to fully utilize whatever resources, no, that the LGUs will have, and then converge it with an NGA's agency. So unlike before, Rafi, ano lang ay, ang convergence namin, national government plus national government. We want to
Mhm,
create impact.
mhm,
Kasi you will notice, for example, sa isang area, ang irrigation facility ng DA ng layo, yung
mhm. Yes, ma'am.
DNR na NGP nandito sa ganitong lugar.
Mhm,
We want to
mhm,
have some convergence para may impact. Kung may infra ka, DPWH dito, DA, and so to create an impact. Ngayon,
mhm.
yung convergence and synergy that we want to happen is not only between and among national government agencies, but also between and among national government agencies and local government units. And hopefully, with that approach, we will be able to really maximize this opportunity that the Mandanas ruling has provided us.
Okay, thank you, Yusek. Director Bonagua, I know it's very difficult to make an estimation for disaster management because it's an interagency uh, council. So, but have you been able to make an estimation on how much the Mandanas ruling will be affecting in the RRMC? Ma'am, nakamute yata ako.
Okay, sorry, Raz.
Ay, kailan pa?
Well, based on the latest estimates given by the Department of Finance, and as already indicated in the local budget memorandum of local government for local government units issued by DBM, the LGUs will have an increase of 263 billion 548 million pesos. This is 37.89% increase from the 2021 era. So that will make around 959 billion pesos of ERA or NATA to local government units. And of course, well, in terms of disaster, 5% of that component, or the total income of local government units is 5% DRM fund, local disaster risk management fund. So kung lumaki yung NTA nila, ERA, that will also serve an increase in the 5% funds that they can use for disaster and environment projects. In terms of environment, syempre hindi determine yan ng LGUs kung magkano unless we tag it, no? Kung magkano ang kanilang spending for the environment projects, kasi halo-halo naman yan. So we have no way of knowing how much the local government units are allocating. And what we know, because of the increase, there are several programs, particularly environment and natural resource programs, that local government units will have to implement themselves, considering that they have the fiscal resource to actually do that. So yun yung ating ginagawa ngayon, and really it's really very critical for the local government units to know the programs that are to be downloaded or to be devolved by national government agency so that they can appropriately program this in their annual budget, no, starting after the issuance of the local budget memorandum by DBM, which was issued on June 14, 2021. That signals the budget preparation phase of local government units. So therefore, they have to be informed of what has to be indicated into their budget, as well as what should be included in their devolution transition plan, which will they have to plan for the next 3 years, hindi lang yung for 2022, but also for 2023 and 2024, so that smoothly face yung full assumption of these functions that the local government units will have to fully assume.
Okay, you mentioned already the phasing approach, and this is what Assistant Secretary Toledo said in the last episode about that.
So makikita ho doon sa devolution transition plans ng mga ahensya ang mga detalye kung paano i-disaggregate or i-unbundle ang mga government functions, services, facilities na ibibigay sa mga LGUs, consistent with existing relevant laws and based on the experience and assessment of the national government agents. However, let me emphasize that the proposed devolution or discontinuance of PAPs shall be done in a phase implementation or by phase. So yun ang kagandahan naman dito. Di naman bibiglayin.
I can recall, ma'am, that back in that episode, we sort of discussed about how local governments that have higher fiscal capacity, like first to third class municipalities, would be, the first ones who would be expected to implement the PPAs, that national governments will be downscaling. And but how has this strategy changed? Because USEC mentioned about their own priority areas. So how is there a general guideline on how the phasing is to be implemented, or does the agency also put in its own factors?
Actually, two-way. Is it for me? Okay. Two-way yan, no? For the Yes, for the national government agency indicated in the DBM National Budget Memorandum 138 issued in January, the list of activities that NGA should stop implementing, and also which specifically provides that if they have to subsidize local government units or to continue to support local government units, it should be limited to those lagging behind LGUs, particularly the low-income class local government. So ganon sa national government. While sa local government units, the phasing that local government units will be indicating is the phasing on how they can fully assume the functions that they have not fully assumed since 1991. No? Kasi we all know that the devolved function has been given them or has been devolved to them since 1991, 1992. And there were succeeding laws passed after the local government code that provides or give local government units additional and new and additional functions, which they also have to assume. But then, ang reality, no, not all local governments are able to implement, are able to absorb this function, citing several limitations, hindi lang funding, but capacity, and a lot more. So what we're asking local government units in the preparation of their devolution transition plan is first to do an inventory of all the services that they are already implementing based on the enumeration of list in section 17 plus the other laws that were passed after the local government code. If there are gaps, the LGUs can plan out on how to face the full assumption of this. And then kasama pa dyan, in addition to that, they have to await, no? They have to know what are the programs and projects that the national government agencies will have to devolve to them. And they can also face that out in accordance with their priorities, capacities, and resources. So talagang kailangan ang coordination with national government agencies. Kasi while the national government are indicating into their DTPs, ano na yung stop nila, siguro they still have to confirm with LGUs that the LGUs can already assume that kasi baka magkaroon ng gap sa service delivery to our constituents. So those are the things that we are looking after na there will not be a gap in the services to our constituents.
Okay po. Sabi nga nung isa naming guest din sa episode 1, hindi lang to additional na pera, additional na trabaho rin yung ibababa. Okay. Yusek Pe, you mentioned that DNR is looking at your priority vulnerable provinces. Are there any other factors with regard to the phased approach that you are considering?
Yeah, well, di ba, kasi, Rafi, no, the PIDS study mentioned that only 40% of the local government units have development plans and 76% were able to spend their local development funds. So actually, for them to receive additional funds would really put pressure on their spending capacity. So I think one consideration is how we can facilitate the formulation of the local development plans of the LGUs. Well, sinasabi nila, ang dami nyo naman kasi nire-require sa national government, ang Climate Change Act, merong Climate Change Action Plan, ang Solid Waste
Opo.
Management Act, may Solid Waste Management Plan. No? So I think we have to really assist the local government units, formulate those local development plans. For us, nagmamatter yung foreign land use plan, especially dahil nga sa nag-overlap on territories when you start doing water resource management and forest resource management, no? So we can assist them do spatial planning so that we can prioritize the areas, but to respond to your question kung ano yung mga consideration aside from determining which are the 24 vulnerable provinces, I think the readiness of the LGUs and the need their needs in terms of formulating their plans, because sa plans magsisimula, alam mo sa gobyerno, pag wala sa plano, hindi mo ma-identify kung ano yung activities. At kahit ma-identify mo yung activities, pag walang indicators, hindi mo malalagay sa work and financial plan. Pag wala sa WFP, walang pondo yan. So even if there are funds, if they are not properly executed, baliwala. So we have to learn lessons from our past implementation. If you want the devolution to be fully funded, you have to start correctly on the local development plans of the LGUs. Then we help them assess their priorities, ano yung mga tools na kailangan nila, and then ano talaga ako tingin ko ito ating promotion talaga namin. Kailangan talaga program convergence budgeting. We're doing that in our cabinet cluster on climate change. Convergence budgeting talaga. Kasi mahirap na iba yung priority ng DPWH, iba yung priority naman ng DNR in terms of promoting integrated water resource management. So kung kailangan ng area ay coastal infrastructure, then dapat doon kami mag-invest. Ang tulong naman namin siguro is on mangroves, no? So we really need to converge our resources to have some impact. Otherwise, lalagpas na naman yung Mandanas ruling for several years na wala tayong key gains na ma-achieve.
Okay. Still a question for yes ma'am. Yes ma'am Lisa.
Okay, siguro idagdag ko lang, no,
Okay.
as by Yusek din, no, na coordination and harmonization is really very important during this time, and also capacitating local government units to ensure that what the national government wants to see are actually being implemented by local government units. No, hindi naman siguro alam din ng lahat ng local governments what they need to do, especially yung mga technical areas like environment, health, and agriculture, no. So while we do not discourage naman the preparation of the different thematic and sectoral plans like solid waste management plan and forest land use plan and etc. Nung marami. Actually, there are 30 plus more thematic and sectoral plans being prepared by local government units. These are good because this will detail the specific action along that particular sector. But ultimately, at the end of the day, we would like to encourage the local government units to integrate all this sectoral and thematic plan into the local development plan, which is really espoused by the local government code. No, dalawa lang naman ang hinihingi talaga sa kanila, the sectoral, the local development plan, which is a multi-sectoral plan, and the local land use plan, which is the spatial dimension of the implementation of the sectoral concerns of local government units. No, so because eventually sa mga policies, not just by the ILG but also by DDM and the other oversight agencies, the budgets of the LG should implement the requirements of the local development plan. So doon nanggagaling. Hindi kaya maganda na lahat ng sectoral and thematic plans are already inputted and incorporated into the local development plans of local government units to ensure funding and implementation of all these concerns. So yun lang,
Okay
Rafi.
po. Okay po. Yusekte, maybe this is a little bit of a controversial question, but the ANR gets mixed reviews when it comes to decentralization. In 2020, the Philippine Institute of Development Studies, a government think tank, said, Dr. Manasan said that aside from the environment and natural resources sector, there was a clear delineation of functions between national and local governments. No? How does this blurry situation affect the preparation of your devolution transition plans?
Actually, Rafi, if you look at the different laws on environment and natural resources, clearly defined naman ang role ng province, cities, and municipalities. So for example, if we can show yung ano natin, no? This came from the budget circular. For example, pagdating sa forest laws, pag provinces, sa'yo yung community-based forest projects, pollution control law, enforcement ng small-scale mining law. Sa municipalities, yung community-based forest projects, communal forest with an area not exceeding 50 square kilometers. So, as you can see, meron namang delineation. I think the problem comes in because of the transboundary nature. Kasi hindi mo na pwedeng sabihin, for example, when you are enforcing forestry law, no? Alam naman natin na puputulin dito, ita-transport diyan, punta sa kabila. So, kagaya yung binabanggit kanina ni Director Lisa, kailangan talaga yung collaboration and coordination on how we will do enforcement, how are you going to do integrated forest management in the sector. So, the law actually provides the delineation. It's how do you operationalize it. So, kaya importante yung mga binubuo nating mga mechanism sa baba. For example, meron tayong mining regulatory board para mapag-usapan doon sino ba dapat bibigyan ng quarry permit, saang area, saan ba, or for example, meron tayong mga air quality management board na lahat ng LGUs nagkikita-kita din doon. No? But and you need to capacitate kasi halimbawa miski sa protected area, sa protected area management board minsan 300, 100 ang membership niya kasi nga ang daming barangay, ang daming munisipyo na kasama. Pero ang tanong, pag nag-usap ba yung PAMBI, anong pinag-uusapan nila? So we need to capacitate the PAMBI, no? We need to capacitate the LGUs so that when they sit down there, they will exercise their role as the local government unit. Anong specific concern sa kanilang lugar na makakatulong or nakakabigat at dapat i-address din nila. So, we need to maximize all these mechanisms kasi yung mga batas natin put up all these mechanisms. We just have to maximize them and we really need to do tawag dito yung convergence planning para I think yan yung hindi pa talaga nagagawa yung convergence planning dun sa mga LGUs. Meron tayong protected area management plan, meron mga ganyan, pero hindi nakikita ano yung connection niya. May disconnect in terms of sa kanya-kanyang plans ng LGUs. Parang nagiging distinct and independent yung each plan. So that's something that we need to address to clearly define the delineation.
Okay po. Ma'am, you mentioned the Protected Area Management Board, the PAMBI. And the PAMBI often interacts with some DNR field personnel. In our first episode, a counselor from Baliwag, Bulacan, who's also our regular contributor to CLRG, Attorney Enrique de la Cruz, said that there is a parallel structure of environment and natural resources officers belonging to the DNR and another structure belonging to the LGUs. And here's what he said.
Alam mo ba na meron tayong mga Community Environment and Natural Resources Office, CENRO ang tawag diyan, ano?
Apo.
Yan ang namamahala
Opo.
sa mga bayan-bayan. Alam mo ba na ang mga yan ang nagpapasweldo pa,
Opo.
national government. Pero ang trabaho niyan bayan lang. Ganun din na PREG yung sa basura, no, yung solid waste management. Yan devolved na yan Yang function na yan, no, devolved na yan. Pero kung mapapansin mo, ang national government pa rin ang namamahala ng mga CENRO, yung mga Community Environment and Natural Resource Office. No? Marami pa rin LGU na walang sariling tapunan ng basura, nakikitapon sa iba. No? Pag binaba na ang pondo, kailangan nang i-implement talaga yan kasi batas na yan Hindi lang na ipapatupad dahil may mga birth pains ang mga LGUs na nagsasabing hindi pa namin kaya.
So with regard to the Penros and the Senros, ma'am, there are three questions from our audience, from Emerin San Gaspar, from Marion Tino, and from Bocal Christopher Baterina, along the same topic. And so how does the devolution transition plan affect these field personnel?
Yeah. Well, una-una let me clarify that the Penros and the Senros that we have at the DNR need to be retained to undertake the functions that need not be devolved, no? Kanina nga makita mo sa sinabi ni Asek Toledo, there are three items, yung mga transboundary in nature, economies of scale, yung mga redistributive role of the national government agencies. They remain with the national government agencies at ang taga-implementa namin yan ay yung aming mga Penros and Senros. Okay? May counterpart dapat kami sa local government units. But the local government code only states that it is optional.
Yes,
So yung mga local, actually hindi rin naman problema kung optional kasi may mga local government who designates their provincial administrator, their planning director, no, to be their environment and natural resource officer. Ang importante lang naman talaga, meron sa local government unit na define kung sino yung counterpart namin. Once we define that, the LGU defines that, then the collaboration, the partnership will be more will be easier and more effective kasi nga kailangan din kasi ng continuity ng paggampan ng trabaho. So sa solid waste management, sa amin kasi ang role namin ay magbigay ng technical assistance, saan ba dapat ang tamang site ng materials recovery facility. Pero yung paano, kung sinong magpopondo, dapat yung LG yon. Pero in the past, dahil hindi nga sapat yung pondo nila, tayo ay nagbibigay ng karagdagang tulong to the local government unit. So, it should be it should not be a one or the other, but it should be institutionalizing both, capacitating both, and see how they can enhance implementation of environment and natural resource management at the ground level.
Yes, ma'am. Ma'am, as a follow-up to that, the LGUs have other issues with the DANR with regard to, maybe this is not just the Mandanas ruling, but the League of Municipalities issued a position paper saying that the DANR function should be devolved to LGUs as well, other functions, but in a phased manner. For example, the protected area management should be fully devolved in 12 months, water resources management in 2 to 3 years, and mineral resources and environmental impact assessment in 4 to 6 years. How do you respond to that?
Well, I think if the law is there, if the law is there, and we have to comply with that, but in the local government units have to show their capacity to be able to perform those things. No, for example, sa environmental impact assessment, ano ba ang nakalagay sa batas? Kasi technical ng environmental impact assessment. So, we need to capacitate them on how they have, unang-una, kami nga, kulang na kulang kami sa sa mga
Mhm. Opo.
geologists, sa mga
Opo.
water experts, para dyan. Now, if they can put that in place in them, in their office, and then wala namang problema, we can transfer the knowledge to them, no? And then, yun nga, magkaroon na lang tayo ng malinaw na uh, criteria and parameters so that nagkakaintindihan tayo on how do we implement the law. So, dun sa, I think yung sa EMB on the EIA, meron bang specific ano dun sa okay, for example sa EIA, ano ba ang role nila sa the scoping, in the conduct of the EIA study, in the conduct of the public hearing. So ito in-institutionalize natin para talagang involve ang local government units, no? So itong mga requirements na to ay bahagi ng permitting requirements na ng local government units. So before they even issue yung building permit nila or whatever, minsan they also require itong mga ECC na to. But even now, they are already involved in the So we are ready to comply with the law, and we just need to make sure that the LGU who's are prepared also, the LGUs are prepared to undertake these regulatory functions.
Still on the topic of protected area management, ma'am. CLRG did an assessment of protected area management in 2015 and 2017, and we looked at the perception of process owners on the functional delineations between national and local governments. And surprisingly, a lot of them still think that it is the ANR's function. Most of the functions would still lie on the ANR's hands. How very, very specific that projects under the ANR would be the NIPAS areas, national parks. How does the devolution transition plan affect the projects there?
Come again, the question is how does
the devolution transition going to affect projects for NIPAS areas?
The devolution would be an opportunity, a platform for us to fully engage the local government units. Alam mo, sa totoo lang, gustong-gusto nga namin involve ang local government units Kasi sila talaga yung nasa baba. For example, ecotourism planning. Okay? Hindi naman kasi basta-basta magtatayo ka doon ng mga structure at therefore ecotourism na siya, di ba? We need to conduct yung tinatawag na nating mga assessment. Ano bang biodiversity mayroon dyan? Ano ba, simple na lang pag protected area, sa Pilipinas lang ang may protected area na puno ng tao. Now, despite having a protected area management plan, hindi tayo makagawa ng zoning because the NIPAS law requires na dapat merong zoning. Saan ba ang multiple use zone? Saan ba ang strict protection zone? Saan ba yung merong pwedeng nakatira? No? Kasi hindi natin magawa yun because the LGUs are having difficulty in relocating the people inside the protected areas. Kahit na sabihin natin dun sa multiple use zone, meron tayong buffer zone. Sa buffer zone, dapat dun lang may mga taong nakatira. No? Pero hindi ma-enforce yan ng LGU. So meantime, wala tayong zoning on the ground. Kaya nga sinabi namin itong pandemic na to naranasan natin is because we failed to really protect our protected areas. Pinapasok natin yung mga protected areas kung saan nandoon dapat yung mga wildlife resources na hindi natin dapat na come into contact with. So kasi hindi pa natin matapos yung delineation on the ground. And the key there is the local government units. We really need to do the management zoning on the ground. And when we do that, we need, again, the capacities and the tools because you need to do protected area assessment, you need to know the biodiversity in the area. Alam mo, baseline assessment lang ilan bang ibon nandyan, ilang bang klase ng species ng bulaklak meron dyan. Dapat yun gumagawa no ng PAMBI eh. Kami sa DNR, I will admit, limited din yung capacities namin dyan.
Yes.
Kaya nga maganda talaga na magsasama ang LGU, ang communities, even private sector, at ang National Government Agency ang DNR para mabuo yan. And then that we can implement properly the E9 Act. So devolution should not be seen as a constraint, but really a platform for us to work together and undertake really what is provided under the law.
Okay, you Secretary, we'll have to leave it there for a while. We'll ask you to come later on for a brief panel discussion in the open forum. Thank you for answering our questions so far. Let me go to Director Lisa Bonagua. Ma'am, again, on the issue of DRR, we don't have yet a national agency or ministry for disasters or national emergencies. And since the NDRRMC is an interagency body, how is this sort of structure affecting the preparation of the devolution transition plans in each of the member agencies? Ma'am, unmute po ulit.
Sorry. Okay.
Okay lang po.
Well, the preparation of the devolution transition plan is by agency. No, in fact, the DBM requested only national government agency, including their attached agencies. No, so and I think the National Disaster Risk Management Council already have met and inform their member agencies to incorporate disaster risk reduction activities in the functions that may probably devolve in accordance with what is still is provided under the local government code. Kasi for this phase of devolution, there is no new function that will have to be devolved to local government unit aside from what is already been provided under the laws. So if these are really for local government units, let them let the national government agencies capacitate them for local government units to be able to perform these functions. So I think that's the guidance for National Disaster Risk Management Council member agencies.
Ma'am, we've been talking about downscaling and upscaling programs, projects, and activities. But if you look at it, the LDRRMOs or the disaster officers are a little bit very different because unlike the NROs, which are optional, they are mandated under RA 10121. But many LGUs still struggle to designate a permanent DRRMO. Fun fact, I once encountered an LDRRMO who is the secretary to the city council. He said he's a reservist and he welcomed the challenge. So he accepted the additional designation. But this is a question also sent to us by Carla Adriano from Pangasinan. But with the additional share from taxes, can the LGUs now use that to designate a permanent LDRRMO since we were only talking about projects and programs?
Okay, so with the increase in the ERA or NATA of local government units, their allocation for personnel, their personal services cap would also be increased. So therefore, they will have greater capacity to hire more as needed, depending on what is the mandated function to local government units. However, still, despite that, no, lalaki yung kanilang PS cap and the PS personal services allotment, but they are still confined with the PS limitation as provided under the local government code. And they also have to subscribe to the DBM policies on position titles and salary level, as well as the civil service rules and regulation. So it will still depend on how much amount will be the increase that can be allocated for personal services, and that will still be confined with the limitation on the PS limitation or the PS cap as provided under the local government code. So I think yan yung challenge really for many local government units. And while the start of the implementation of the devolved functions or the transition will start in 2022, it will not be immediately will not immediately impact on the PS allocation because the PS allocation depends on the previous year's income or total budget of the local government units. So therefore, kung ano yung budget nila ng 2021, yun yung kanilang certain percentage of that, 45 to 45% of that is their limitation for the 2022 personnel services. I think DBM right now, to aid local government units' assumption of full devolved functions, is proposing for the waiver of the PS cap by 2022, only for 2022, so that they can immediately hire and put in place the necessary personnel to absorb the new devolved functions. So we hope that that will happen. No? They have prepared the proposal, and this will have to be approved by Congress to be incorporated in the GAA 2022.
Okay po. We received advanced questions from Ruth Batape from Bigan, Regina Ocampo from Tanawan, Batangas, about the Mandanas ruling's effect on what we would normally call the calamity fund. Haba kasi ng acronym. But I think it being a percentage of the total budget, it will expand. But in a 2021 study by PIDS again, pointed to a very low utilization rate of just about 17%. And just for context, for those who may not know, LGUs can use the funds for mitigation and advanced planning, even if a disaster has yet to happen. So I guess the question is, what on people's minds is, why give additional funds, which will eventually just lie sleeping in the treasure chest? How is the DILG trying to sort of remedy that?
Well, that is one challenge that we are looking at right now, specifically also cited in a World Bank study that the utilization rate for programs and projects, especially for high-ticket programs and projects at the local level, are slower than if implemented by national government agencies. So therefore, we really have to capacitate the local government units and maybe study some of the procurement procedures that that limits the speed and the capacities of local government units to implement. While the DILG, DBM, and the NDRMC already have a joint circular 2013-1, which provides for the allocation and utilization of the local DRM fund. Baka kailangang pag-aralan. It might also have some effect in terms of the utilization, the enumeration of the list of eligible projects and activities can be funded may somehow limit them to fully utilize that portion of the fund. So I think that also is a concern that has to be looked at in order to really maximize the resources that are now at the hands of the local government units.
Okay po. So parang LGUs are too imaginative for the policy. Parang the policy has to sort of expand the list so that they can be able to use the funds. Okay, ma'am. Related to expenditures pa rin, with the NDRRMF. In 2020, that was also used for covering operations against COVID-19. So what are the implications of the additional funding now in terms of the role of LGUs in COVID-19 management? The IATF has already laid down what are the roles of local government units in responding to the impact of COVID-19, and this has to be supported by funds. The national government, particularly DBM and the DILG, already have relaxed the use of the 20% development fund, so that local government units can use this to respond to COVID-19 activities, and as well as the joint circular on the utilization of DRM funds. I think they already have some guidance that some portion can be used or can be allowed to be used for certain activities. Hindi naman lahat, no? Hindi mostly kasama yung ayuda, but in related activities. And I think there are also some fund allocation which are ring fenced for certain activities like Gender and Development Fund, which were relaxed and facilitated so that this can be immediately used by local governments to respond to COVID-19. But all this will have to follow the guidelines of IATF and the specific guidelines governing the use of those specific funds, like the DRM funds, the
GAD fund and the 20% development fund.
Okay. Our last question was supposed to be on convergence, and a lot of discussions on the ANR's part had been about convergence and how convergence plans ought to make their way into local government plans. What's being done at the moment, ma'am, for sort of those convergence plans to penetrate through LGU plans?
Okay. Right now, tuloy may isa ring related question dyan na we are going through the process before the Regional Development Council.
Mm-hmm.
Right now, we are formulating what we call the IPRR, Investment Portfolio for Risk Resiliency. We, together with the local government unit, we identify investment areas that are needed based on the vulnerability of their localities. And then we propose this to the Regional Development Council to ensure that this is considered in the investment plan for the region. And then from there, we will be able to support the LGUs in ensuring that the needed resources be used in these projects. And then the DNR will be there together with the other agencies to parang leverage in our own funds. No? So para meron din kami sariling pondo namin i-leverage dun sa kung anong investment and resources mayroong ibibigay yung provinces. So in that case, we will be able to implement the investment portfolio of the provinces. So ano pa rin, yung mechanism pa rin natin sa RDC, yun pa rin yung ating gagamitin.
Ma'am, there seems to be a lot of dialogue going on and some back and forth, but the budget season is already upon us, both for national and both for local. And we've been doing some FGDs on the side among local governments, and they were saying that they need guidance and they need the inputs for them to go into the budget season. So I mean, what sort of milestones can we expect from national government regarding, I mean, those inputs to the budget process?
Actually sumulat na kami sa NEDA for them to parang tawag dito, ensure that the RDC will consider the IPRR. Sumulat, nagmemo na kami sa mga regional offices, Penro and Centros namin, especially dun sa 24 vulnerable provinces to already reach out to their counterpart local government units and do joint planning and spatial planning. And we also, as I mentioned earlier, we met with the leagues. We also had an audience with the DBM, kay Yusek Pascua, Asek Toledo, para talaga din maipaabot namin sa kanila. Kasi we are proposing na sa laki nung scope ng environment and natural resource management, we are suggesting that we have a focus. And we are proposing that from 2022 to 2024, maybe for the next 3 years, kasi yun yung 3-year forward estimates natin, mag-focus tayo on water resilience and water security. So, yun yung investment natin. Kasi when you talk of climate change, when you talk of response to pandemic and talk of green recovery, kailangan natin talaga i-make sure yung water security and water resilience natin. So, we are proposing na any investments ay mapunta dito. So kasama dito Rafi, yung integrated watershed management kasi yung syempre ridge to reef yung approach natin.
Yes.
Tapos yung water resource management natin. So actually may slides kami, papakita sana natin yung spatial planning that we did para
I think we have that
natin saan yung mga water stress areas at doon tayo mag-invest para meron man lang tayo, at I think malaking bahagi ng problema natin ma-achieve natin when we do that. For example nga dito, we try to look at the scenario on water stressed areas in the Philippines. Ang isa kasing na-find out natin, ang water gap natin ay 32% and under a high climate scenario, the gap could increase to 54%. So, to maintain the current water gap around 32%, kailangan natin ng 10 times na investment of the current investment now. No? So here, you can see that in 2040, ito yung mga provinces that will experience increased water stress by 140% in 2040. Kaya pinakita namin to sa mga leagues, please help us reach out to the LGUs and
Mhm, mhm,
also our Pendros, Sendros. Kung itong mga probinsya nyo, pwede ba, please look, go to your LGU and kumbaga sa marketing person
mhm,
ibenta nyo na, i-market nyo na itong water security, water resilience as a major investment na dapat nilang gawin. Pero so at least dito meron na tayong makikita na kung saan sila pwedeng magsimula. In-identify din namin yung kung saan yung merong water stress, in-overlay natin yan kung saan naman yung vulnerable provinces. So nakita natin, 12 of these provinces are climate vulnerable provinces. So dapat
mhm,
dito yung merong major investments in water, sanitation, water-related infrastructure and services. Kasi sa totoo lang, hindi masyadong keen ang LGUs to invest in these areas kasi
mhm.
hindi
Yes,
siya
ma'am.
hindi siya
Opo.
alam mo yon, hindi siya agad-agad nakikita ang impact
Opo,
But
opo.
these are strategic investments that will be the legacy of the local chief executive if they address these problems. And with the pandemic and with the challenge or with the threat of climate change, we need to have some focus, and we are proposing this in the
Mhm.
program convergence budgeting that will do some focus on water resilience and water
Okay
security.
po. Okay, I only have 2 minutes. Ma'am Lisa, any other inputs for our LGUs with
Okay.
regard to for the budget season?
Yes. Today is the start of the budget season of the local government units, no, upon the issuance of the local budget memorandum 82, and provided under section 4 of the EO 138 that except for those functions that are should be shared with national government, the local government unit shall be primarily and ultimately responsible. So meron pa rin mga convergence program that are not affected by the Supreme Court ruling that needs inter-LGU coordination. And this include, yun nga yung minimension natin, interjurisdictional concerns, lalo na ang disaster and an environment which do not recognize boundary of local government units. So therefore, during this planning period, we have a phase in the, or a window in the planning and budget process, which we call convergence dialogue, which, as mentioned by Yusek Anna, where national government agencies shall market the programs and projects that will have to be supported and probably funded by local government units, considering that they have the resources right now, and that should be incorporated into their plans and budget. So that this is the time where we need the inputs and information from the national government agencies to share their programs and projects that will be devolved to local government units, so that this can be appropriately incorporated into their plans and budget, as well as in their devolution transition plan. So this is the right moment to market those activities to local government units. I think you're muted, Ralph.
Ay, ako naman pala. Okay. Thank you, Yusek and Director. Let's head on over to my colleague, Ms. Maricris de los Santos, who is collecting the questions from our audience. Ma'am Chris?
Hello, good afternoon, Sir Ralph. Thank you very much, Director Anna, Director Liza Banagua, and Yusek Anna for those discussions on how we could look into how the devolution transition plan will affect our environment and natural resources and DRRM plans. So while the participants registered for this webinar talk show, we had some advanced questions from them. And the first question came from the House of Representatives. So according to Ms. Robelyn de Ocampo, she was asking about the boundaries of, we know that ENR and DRRM transcends boundaries. So the question is whether for instance, there's a river and there are different LGUs that are passed through by this river, and one LGU from those LGUs has enough funds to allocate the restoration or allocate for restoration. But one or more of these LGUs do not have the same budget capacity. So how will this affect efforts to preserve natural resources? And how do we address cases like this? So this can apply not only with natural resources, but also in the RRM. So anyone from the panel?
Oo nga po.
Yeah.
If I may,
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, you said.
yeah. Okay. I think more than the resources, what is important is the commitment and the political will of the LGU. So kahit hindi siya mag-commit ng resources, there are actually in-kind contribution that the LGU can provide. Ang importante lang nga, committed siya. So the fact na mag-join lang siya sa mga meeting, mga capacity building, that would already contribute, no, to the management of the, let's say, river restoration. That is already enough. Second, that is why we still need some resources at the national government level para itong mga ganitong tawag dito, gaps, no, can still be responded to by the national government. So it can be addressed by the commitment and political will, and of course additional support pa rin from the national government agencies.
Yes, and then ma'am, actually may follow up with a related question din po dito that in these cases there's what we call an inter-LGU collaboration. So there's one who asked Mr. Mariantino, are there examples of provincial governments or maybe municipal governments also who are outstanding in terms of inter-LGU cooperation when addressing these transboundary issues?
Ayan.
Mhm.
Director Lisa.
Well, there are very good example. For example, in the Naga area, because they have the Metro Naga Development Council, which oversee programs and projects of adjacent local government units, not just of one LGU. And then I think there are several coordination mechanism I just cannot remember, but many are in the Cordillera region. Maybe we can provide you with they have some sort of cooperation agreement among cities and municipalities to address common concerns such as solid waste management, because as we all know, solid waste management requires somehow large resources and highly technical capacities that it can be better implemented by a group of local government units. And I think we have some good example in Bohol. I cannot remember the acronyms of their association, which undertakes local economic development activities such as the processing of kawayan, wherein the JICA introduced a technology to that group of local government. We have a good number of documentation on this. I cannot just provide you some specific information right now.
Ma'am, the interlocal cooperation has been there in the local government code since 1992. It hasn't taken off in the same way as other best practices of LGUs have. Ano po kaya dahilan, ma'am? And is this the opportunity?
Yeah, it was provided under Section 33 of the Local Government Code. But then, as challenges, kasi ano lang to, no, cooperation among local government units headed by local chief executives. So when there are changes in administration or in leadership, some of the association of local government units fails, no? Yun yung mga hindrances. And also the resources that local government units have to put up, because there are a lot of limitation in putting common resources among local government units in view of COA rules and regulations. So the accountability still rests within individual local government units and not in the groupation of the local government. So maraming legal and administrative issues that goes along with inter-LGU cooperations.
Yusek Te, may experience ba kayo sa environment? Yung mga nagko-cooperate na LGUs?
Yeah, actually, yung experience namin, yung mga successful kami, for example, yung mga co-management approaches
Mm.
namin with the LGUs.
Mm.
For example, in Bagao, Cagayan, meron tayong mga, uh, yung municipal government natin dyan, nagtayo ng community-based forest management council, no, para regularly nila ma-monitor yung mga CBFM organizations natin. And then sa Lanao del Sur, 2,184 hectares natin na co-management agreement yan with the local government unit. So, meron na rin tayong partnership, for example, sa Nueva Vizcaya, where 20,000 hectares of forest lands being co-managed by the provincial government. So, as I mentioned earlier, yung commitment talaga on environment and natural resource management, pag nandiyan, madali talagang nating ma-mobilize yung mga interagency, inter-LGU partnerships.
Chris,
Okay.
questions?
Yes. Thank you po for those answers. The next question po came from DILG Las Piñas naman po. They were asking, will the DNR and OCD personnel be localized, devolved in LGUs, regularly working closely with the city or barangay officials in providing technical assistance? So, ano po ang kanilang response to this question?
For us, no, sa DNR, I think there is no laws stating that we should evolve our Senro Penros. What the local government provides is for the LGU to create their office, and that the process is they have to parang apply or submit a proposal to the DBM to create that position. But even without devolving the functions, the Senros and Penros are mandated to provide the technical assistance to the local government units, and they will be very, very glad to do it with the LGUs.
Mhm. Director Liza, din naman po sa OCD or sa DRRM, will there be technical assistance po available for LGUs or personnel who will be devolved or localized?
Um, well, this phase of devolution, kasi fiscal decentralization ito, will not require local government units to mandatorily absorb affected personnel of national government agencies. So yung affected personnel, kung meron man, have several options. So they can be transferred to another office, they can be absorbed by the other units within the office, or they may opt to retire. I think maganda yung package that BBM is offering those that will be affected. Or if they are still interested, they have the capacity and they're still willing to work, they can apply to positions at the local government units. Kasi 'di ba, kailangan ng local governments ng additional manpower to man the additional services. But they have to apply, and if selected, they'll be treated as new hires in the local government. So walang lateral transfer like what happened in 1991. So, and for DRR, hindi ko specifically alam kung may mga to be affected under OCD. But then there is already the local DRMOs, which is already a full functioning office that is already to be established in each local government unit. So I doubt if there's still a need for some national government personnel to be devolved, since they already have a fully functioning local DRM.
Okay. Thank
Okay.
you.
Okay.
Yes.
Director Lisa, we have a question from Jedi Magonsha. And it's a very, very interesting question. Sabi niya, who will determine which LGU is already ready for full devolution of functions? Meron bang readiness police?
Actually, we kept on saying this, no? Wala namang one study or one criteria that will determine LGU readiness. So it's the devolution happened 30 years ago. And those same list of devolved functions are the ones should be performed by local government units. But even at this time, we cannot say that all of these devolved functions are really being implemented by local government. So what we have at the very least is the Seal of Good Local Governance, which sees whether local governments are able to perform certain functions as required by national government agencies. And we all know that the same set of functions are devolved to local government units regardless of their capacity, resources, or developmental condition. No? Lahat ng nakalagay sa Section 7, whether you are a highly urbanized municipality or a very rural, far-flung municipality, same set yung kanilang dapat i-implement. So yan yung difficulty. So I think what's really important is the support of the national government. No, kaya nga doon sa MBN, limit resources to those needing local government units. And right now, also specified in the EO, there's a provision for the establishment of a growth equity fund, which hopefully support ito yung mga lagging and far-flung local government units to enable them to at least absorb and deliver, if not deliver comparable, at least ma-absorb nila yung functions devolved to them. So these are the things that we're currently doing right now. And as mentioned by Yusek Ana also, the capacity development intervention of the ILG through the leadership of the Local Government Academy will depend on the capacity and performance of local government. So depending on the capacity and performance, the engagement and the capacity development package that will be given to our local government units will be different in accordance with their needs and requirements.
Okay, Ma'am Chris, any other question?
Perhaps this would be the last question, but ito yung isa sa mga concerns sa mga LGUs natin. So someone from Capiz and from Hernani, Eastern Samar, they were asking if it's possible for DNR to communicate with LGUs through the NRO and orient them on the guidelines on what will be devolved. And similarly, is it possible that the national government agencies can meet the LGUs by region or province in one forum where they can be oriented or capacitated on the effects of the Mandanas ruling?
Certainly, ma'am. Siguro after this, of course, there's a standing talaga naman na they should work with their counterpart LGUs. But with this session or with this forum, no, I will inform our USEC for field operations if they can expressly direct the the PENROS and the CENROS to have an orientation on the devolved functions, and also to have a discussion. Actually, not just basically the devolution transition plan. They have to localize the devolution transition plan that we formulated at the central office and see how it will be operationalized at the up to the central level. We'll do that, ma'am. Thank you for raising that concern.
Okay, Director Liza.
Indicated in the guidelines for the preparation of the devolution transition plan that DILG to facilitate dialogues between national government agencies and local government units at the regional level. So siguro within the next 2 weeks, our regional offices will be moving around to really conduct dialogue so that there will be convergence of efforts between national and local government units. So, thank you.
Okay, Chris, is that the last question?
Yes, that would be the last question. Yes.
Okay, if that is the last question, I would like to thank our 2 distinguished panelists for today. Thank you again to Undersecretary Annalisa Te and to Director Annalisa Bonagua for sharing some of their precious time with us and answering some of our makukulit na questions. Since that is the last question, we will indeed wait with eyes peeled for more developments as we head on to budget season. This isn't our last episode, so we will have more episodes as we follow the developments on the Bandanas ruling. And before we close, we would like to hear a few words from our director at CLRG, Professor Ali Celestino. Ma'am Alice.
Okay, thank you, Paeng. Okay, as already mentioned earlier, this is our third webinar talk show in our Policy Issues Forum, focusing on the impact of the Supreme Court ruling on the Mandanas Garcia petitions. I noticed that the discussion is getting more and more interesting since we are now talking about the details and specs of how the EO on full devolution should proceed. But before anything else, I would like to thank our resource persons, two Annalisas, Yusek Anate of the Department of the Environment and Natural Resources, and Director Lisa Bonagua of the Department of the Interior and Local Government for their kindness in accommodating us this afternoon. We are grateful to both of you for sharing valuable information about this full devolution issue, clarifying issues and giving the assurance that the devolving agencies like the DNR, for instance, are open and willing to assist in the transition phase of this second phase of devolution. This full devolution actually reminds me of the first year of the implementation of the 1991 Local Government Code. Many LGUs then were anxious because for the first time in more than 300 years, substantial powers and functions, new powers and functions were devolved to them. They were given the opportunity to exercise a certain degree of local autonomy for the first time. Now, the same anxiety can be seen among the local government units. Many LGUs are asking a lot of questions like, what happens if we cannot effectively implement what is being devolved to us? Since technically speaking, we are yet to develop our technical capacities to perform the devolved function. For lower income LGUs, they are concerned about their fiscal constraints in spite of the additional allotments to be given to them next year. There are many more questions and concerns among the LGUs, and I think most of these concerns are being addressed by the devolving agencies and oversight agencies like the DILG. Now that we have the EO on full devolution, the way to go is to come up with implementing guidelines that are crystal clear to implementers and stakeholders. In terms of preparation, we are happy to note that the DILG, together with their regional offices, have already started facilitating dialogues between the LGUs and the devolving agencies. This is in line with the devolution transition plans, which will contain the functions and services LGUs have to assume, as well as the timing of the devolution implementation. LGUs are given 3 years to fully exercise what have been transferred to them, and perhaps if 3 years are not enough, for some LGUs, technical assistance and oversight guidance will not be withdrawn, I believe, from them. Our resource persons also emphasize the importance of cooperation, collaboration, coordination, convergence among LGUs, devolving agencies, and other relevant stakeholders to ensure the smooth implementation of the full devolution. So I guess we need to come up with strategies on how to improve collaboration and interlocal cooperation, especially in functions or services that transcend political boundaries like watershed management, disaster risk reduction management, and so on. Perhaps certain incentives may be given to the LGU so that they will commit to interlocal cooperation. Selling the idea of interlocal cooperation could be a hard sell, but we should not discourage us from marketing it. So in closing, I hope that our participants will continue to get involved in learning sessions like this, and that your concerns have been addressed by our resource persons. We have a limited time, but I am sure that the sharing session has been fruitful for all of us. We still have some more questions in mind, but don't worry. I am confident that in due time, this will be addressed in other forums and venues. We will have more webinars of this type in the coming months, so I would like to invite you again in our upcoming forums. Okay, thank you so much again to Director Lisa and USEC Anna for serving as instruments in clarifying the concerns of the LGUs and other stakeholders. Thank you for the information that you have shared this afternoon, and thank you for sharing us your ideas and insights on how we can move together towards the smooth implementation of the full devolution. Maraming salamat din po sa lahat ng mga participants for your continued interest in participating in our webinars. We hope that we are able to contribute in bridging the knowledge gap that exists in understanding the full devolution policy. So maraming salamat po sa inyong lahat. Until next month for another webinar. Thank you po.
Salamat po, Boss Alice. I could not have said it better than that. I think this is the time when we would ask you to please open your cameras so we can have a group picture. So if you could only hold your beautiful smile for the next 2 minutes for for my colleagues to capture your smiles before we proceed to our final reminders. So ready na ba? Ready na ba kayo, guys? Okay, ang ngingiti na kami, ha? Gano'n ba katagal? Mahirap maging artista. O, smile! And hold the smile. Wala nagpo-prompt sa akin, ha? Okay na ba? Okay.
Yes.
Okay na daw. So, before we finally say goodbye, we will just have some reminders. Please fill out the feedback forms that will be sent through the chat box. The link will be sent through the chat box. You can also scan the QR code. These are our requirements, parameters for those who would like to receive your certificates. Our certificates will be released within the next 7 working days. Okay. Please follow us on our social media handles as well as on our website. This is the link to the feedback form. If you would like to receive notifications with regard to the next episodes of the Mandanas ruling series that CLRG is providing, please follow us in our social media platforms. So before we say goodbye, this webinar would not be possible without the excellent CLRG team behind the camera, who make me look very intelligent, as if I thought of all the questions for today. So hats off to Miss Chris De Los Santos and Mr. Maki Asuncion, our co-captains for today's session. And many thanks to the production team who have made it their mission to bring this public forum to you absolutely free. So we are ever so slightly getting better at this every episode. So we hope that you appreciate it. That's why you keep coming back. So from all of us, the CLRG team, zooming from as far north as Pangasinan to as far south as Laguna, thank you for watching, and we will see you again as we continue to count the costs arising from the Mandanas ruling. Magandang hapon po. Have a good afternoon. Have a